Hey everyone, Tom Butwin here for Premier Guitar, and today we're talking 6 overdrives for any occasion. Before we get into the video today, make sure you subscribe to the Premier Guitar YouTube channel so you don't miss anything in the future. So the way this is going to work is we're going to walk through each one of the pedals individually, talk about some of the unique features, of course, listen to them, and then I'm going to tell you where and when and who I think these pedals are best for. Throughout the video, we're going to be powering each pedal with this Chalk's DC7 power supply, so every pedal has clean, reliable, and noiseless power. And one other thing to mention, if any of these pedals spark your interest, make sure to check out the description below because you can find out exactly how you can actually win one of them from Premier Guitar. So this is the PRS Horsemeat transparent overdrive. That is Paul Reed Smith. Yes, they make pedals now, and one of them that they make is this overdrive pedal. It is a from scratch circuit that they developed, and as you would expect within the name, it's a transparent style overdrive. So what does that mean? It's really not designed to color the amp or the guitar in any way that isn't already inherent within those two pieces of equipment. So you are adding any range of gain styles that this pedal can give you to your equation, but you're not really changing that fundamental character of your guitar or amp, which is ideal. And that allows you to do some cool things with this. You can use this with the gain knob turned down as more of a clean sort of boost with still some character to it. And then if you go full out or close to full out on the gain, of course, you're really into just true overdrive territory here. So the rest of the controls on this pedal are very straightforward. You've got bass and treble in the EQ section. You've got level, and then the really cool thing is voice. Now this voice knob operates within the overdrive portion of the circuit, so it gives you just a really cool dynamic range from something that's got a little more sparkle to something that's got a little bit more low-end, mid-range meat. And the cool thing about that knob is that it's really usable across the entire spectrum. If you crank it all the way up or crank it all the way down and everything in between, it's all very usable and allows you to dial in some really unique character from this pedal. So who is this pedal for? I think this is for the type of player who has a rig that they're generally pretty happy with already, or an amp that they're happy with, and they want this to interact with either another drive pedal or a edge of breakup kind of setting on your amplifier that you really like. So whether you're using this as a clean-ish boost or a typical overdrive, it's going to push your amp or another drive pedal into some places that are really, really, really cool, all while not adding anything as far as tonal character that would be unexpected. It doesn't have that, like maybe some pedals that have that mid boost to them. This is going to be transparent, as the name would imply, and I think it's going to help you really just push whatever gear you're already using into some very cool places and offer you some kind of fail-safe ways to get new tones and new sonic territory out of things that you already love and you already own. So this is the Tilt Overdrive from Rev Amps. It was developed with Sean Tubbs, the famous session player, and this is the only dual function overdrive we have in the collection today. You get both the drive portion and then a boost, all in one pedal in a relatively small footprint. So let's start with the overdrive section here. This is a totally unique overdrive circuit. It's not emulating or paying homage to any particular pedal out there. It's basically going after the sound that Sean had in his head, and it's designed to be just a great combination of like every good overdriven guitar tone you could possibly think of out there, boiled down into this one drive section. And you get some pretty straightforward controls: volume and gain, treble and bass. So in the boost section, that's where things get really interesting here. And you've got, of course, a boost knob with up to 12 decibels of boost, and then a tilt EQ, which is where the pedal gets its name from. Now, a tilt EQ, if you're not familiar with what that is when you rotate the knob, what you're doing is, yes, you're boosting or cutting treble or bass, but it keeps all the frequencies relative to one another equal, basically. So if you imagine like a seesaw, tilting, so if you boost your treble, it cuts the bass around that mid pivot point accordingly, as opposed to if you're just boosting treble or cutting treble or boosting bass or cutting bass, the relationship between those boosted frequencies and everything else that's not touched is not the same as when you use a tilt EQ. So it's a really usable, very functional type of EQ for this boost that doesn't get harsh, doesn't get muddy, but it's just very controlled and precise and allows you to dial in the tone that you really want. Now, if that's not enough for you and you really want to nail down, especially the low end, you have this tight switch here, so full, normal, half, and it gives you kind of a graphic representation of what it's doing to the low end of the signal here. So you can tame things or boost things or leave things alone even more, both with the tilt EQ as well as this tight switch. And one more thing to note is that you can use these independently. You don't have to have the overdrive engaged to use the boost. Now, who is this for? This is for the player who needs an all-in-one solution, okay? You have no other overdrive or boost. You get everything you need in this small footprint. You get great tone, really no matter where you put the knobs. It's designed to sound really, really good. And with the tilt EQ, that's the type of knob where you can't really mess it up. Just find a sweet spot, sweep through, and you're going to find something that sounds great and something that you really like. So if you're a player who needs something for a small board, or this is just the only pedal you have room for and you gotta have your boost and overdrive in the same footprint and have it sound great, Tilt Overdrive from Rev Amps is for you. So this is the Spruce Goose from Electro-Harmonix. Now this is a blues breaker style overdrive. So you're going to get that smooth, articulate, rich type of overdrive that we all know and love. The controls on this pedal are fairly straightforward. You got a volume and gain. The bass and treble in the EQ section are very straightforward as well, but there is something cool happening with this bass knob here. It's an active bass control, so you can boost and cut bass frequencies as needed. So for example, if you're playing with a single coil guitar that could use a little bit of meat on the bottom end, you can dial that in with this knob, and vice versa, of course, if you got maybe a humbucking guitar where it's really fat on the bottom end and you want to reduce some of that low end rumble, this knob will allow you to do that. Now, where things get interesting on the Spruce Goose is with this toggle switch in between all four knobs. Now, this switch has 3 different positions. In the down position of the lift switch, as they call it, we are not adding any gain or doing anything to the signal. That's just the raw sound of the pedal. If we move into the middle position on this toggle switch, we're adding 9 decibels of boost before the overdrive circuit. And then the top position of the lift switch, we're adding 21 decibels of boost before that overdrive circuit. So who is this pedal for? Well, I think it's going to be best suited for the player who has a multitude of guitars that might have different outputs from their pickups. So if you have a more vintage inspired guitar where it's a lower output pickup, you can compensate with this lift switch by going from the bottom off position to the middle 9 decibel position. So Leave it down for your hotter output guitars, and then when you pick up your vintage-inspired low output pickups, flip it to the middle, and you can kind of maintain some middle ground and consistency with the pedal that way. Now, of course, with any guitar, you can go up into that 21 decibel range, and you're gonna get that extra bit of boost into the overdrive circuit, which is a lot of fun no matter who you are. This is the Mofetta from Wampler. Now this is going to be an homage to the Mastortion style pedal that does have some clones out there, but not as many as some other pedals that have just been reproduced in any number of ways over the years. So as the name would imply, the basis for this pedal, without getting too deep into electronic engineering, are the MOSFETs that are inside here, which are tube-like. They give you that tube overdriven amp kind of thing that we all know and love, and we're all trying to get out of our favorite overdrive pedals. So it does that really, really well, and it faithfully recreates that Mastortion sound that has become a staple of Nashville session players on their boards. The Mofetta covers all of your favorite Mastortion style tones in its stock setting, to include all that really great articulation that you get even at high gain settings. But if you go and add in the texture switch here that Wampler has added, you are now in a world that includes all sorts of really cool high gain, mid punchy tones that don't necessarily exist on the original, but are really, really great and make this pedal that much more versatile and just maybe like a step beyond where it started. So who is this pedal for? Well, I think this pedal absolutely needs to be on the board of any session player out there, because this is one of those tones that you just really have to have at your fingertips. And having a switch like the texture switch just gives you almost like another pedal within a pedal. So you get all the classic tones that you'd want out of Mastortion, but then some really unique and interesting things you can get going with the texture switch. So it's just one more piece of versatile gear for a session style player who needs to be able to cover a lot of ground in a lot of different situations with the same rig. So this is the Warmdrive from Warm Audio, and this pedal is different than any of the other ones we're talking about also, in that it is going after that very special amp in a box style tone. It's a really simple pedal. It's got 4 knobs, volume and gain on the top here, tone and voice. So let's talk about the tone and voice knobs here. The voice knob is going to be before the gain stage, and you can think of it like maybe on the old Tweed style amps where you are boosting or cutting low end, but at the same time you're adding or subtracting gain. So it's a little bit different than your typical tone knob. There is a gain component to this as well as you turn the knob up. Now, if you go over to the tone knob, this is after the gain stage, and it's going to be your typical kind of tone shaping type knob where you can get brighter or darker sounds. So the combination of these two pedals allows you to really dial in a sound that works great with whatever guitar or amp that you have. So who is this pedal for? Well, I think that because this pedal is, again, very different than your typical overdrive pedal, it's really an amp in a box. I would think of it that way. So the person that would benefit most from a pedal like this is somebody with an amplifier that could use some added character. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're someone with just a pretty straight up clean amp that's just a pedal platform, maybe an amplifier that you don't really use at very high volume, so you can't get it into that really sweet spot that you'd want to in your living room, let's say, if you throw one of these Warmdrives into the equation, especially with some of your existing drive pedals or other pedals, now all of a sudden, if you let it act like your amp, it adds all this really rich, amazing character to what could maybe be a flat or boring kind of plain amp tone, and it gives you the opportunity to have some really, really cool overdrive tones at lower, more manageable volumes, all within a pedal. This is an Ibanez Tube Screamer TS808, but it's not just any TS808. This is the Tamura-Mod V2 from Godlyke. And if the name Tamura sounds familiar to you, that's because it is the name of Susumu Tamura, who invented the Tube Screamer. Yes, he has done a mod to the TS808, and we have it right here. So when you think of the characteristics of any Tube Screamer out there, it's your tube-driven overdrive sound, but it's got that mid-hump that is a quintessential characteristic, whether you like it or not, of Tube Screamers. Now, what this mod does is it actually takes away that mid-hump and it really beefs up the bottom end. So this is designed specifically to work really well with single coil pickups that could use a little bit of help in the low end, and it gets rid of, again, that signature sort of mid-hump that a lot of people don't like with Tube Screamers, but it still retains every characteristic of the Tube Screamer that you would enjoy. It just doesn't have that same EQ profile. So Tamura was able to capture that magic in a bottle with the help of Godlyke, and they sourced some new old stock components and gave you a pedal now that is really on par with a boutique version of the Tube Screamer. And so there's a couple other really cool things about this. Of course, you have the overdrive, the level, and tone controls, but they've replaced the chiclet switch that's normally on the TS808 with this much more robust plunger style switch, which is really cool for longevity. If you flip the pedal over, you will notice that each one of these is signed by Mr. Tamura himself, which immediately, I mean, between the components inside of the pedal and then the signature on the back and of course the sound, you've got something akin to a collector's piece right off the bat. So while yes, this could be for the collector of pedals, I think that the Tube Screamer with the Tamura-Mod V2 from Godlyke is really best suited for the player who gave up on Tube Screamers a long time ago. So it takes out what many people don't like about the traditional Tube Screamer sound, and it adds in some really great tones and really, really cool things, not to mention the fact that you get a brand new foot switch that's way better, as well as a signature from the guy who invented the Tube Screamer. But I think that if you're someone who, like I said, gave up a while ago, this is the way to go back in and try a Tube Screamer again. So those are our 6 overdrive pedals and all of the types of players and occasions that I think they would be best suited for. Of course, if you have your own ideas or suggestions as to when and where these pedals can be used, make sure you drop those in the comments below. And don't forget to take a look at the description to find out how you can win one of these pedals for yourself. And I'll see you in the next video.